We're right upside down today.
Speak for yourself. Something went wrong. Something always goes wrong on this computer. This was Pete's when he was a commissioner. It's hanging in, I guess.
How often do you have Jeremy?
I had him add some memory a couple of years ago because it was
Say,
doing nothing.
sure
That's
it
all I've
needed it.
done. I work from home in my home laptop a lot more than I do this just because of this. Well, I'm here, I guess. This.
Hey, it is 10 a.m. on September 21st. Harney County Court is in session for the purpose of the work session portion of the agenda and voucher approval.
Details.
Okay. Good morning. It is Wednesday, September 21st. County Court is in session for our regular portion of our meeting, and we will begin with the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Welcome. All right, item 2, agenda approval.
Any additional items?
I have one employee recognition. All.
Okay, well, I move to approve the agenda with the addition.
Second.
Agenda's been approved and seconded. Any other further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. And opposed. Agenda's approved. Item 3, approval of minutes. September 6th meeting. Yes, thank you.
I move to approve the September 6th, 2022 County Court meeting minutes.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve minutes from September 2nd, or September, sorry, 6th, 2022. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed. Item 4, opportunity for public comment. Have you give your name and your agenda topic.
I'm Corey Shellman. I'm just here in regard to some of the changes going on with fairgrounds right now.
Okay.
Potential changes, and so. Thank you, the county court, and everybody involved for, I know we got some money to do some changing with. Personally, heard a lot of concern about the how, why, where, and when, and so I guess without any further ado, we just hope that there was honestly an open forum public meeting for people to come and talk about it before we flatten the place.
So, let me just kind of recap where it's at. Okay, so we had the money just came in August, so we had a supplemental budget and hearing. Money's not been placed in the funds. There hasn't been a dime spent. And this is from the court standpoint. So the Fair Board has the authority over what's going to happen. And there'll be a cooperation with the county court. So 2 or 3 years ago when Jordan was there, he had a study done by a Coliseum something company and with a grant. With showed different, ideas, thoughts of where it could go, what maybe would benefit it best. And then it fizzled because of COVID and then you had to find money, so. COVID is pretty much behind us and money's here. So they're gonna, I think it's the Fair Board's intent to reconnect with that company. And the process will start moving forward. But that's the Fair Board's call. Really, that's where the questions need to be asked.
Well,
And where they're at in that process, I mean, they're really just, there's, I heard one rumor that as soon as fair's over, coming in and tearing down business. That's not the case. And, they're about 3.5 million. That's not gonna go a long ways. But it'll sure give us.
That's
something we haven't
my
had.
only concern is that if we flatten that place, the money they have isn't really gonna get it done. And that's so, just my opinion. Any other community has done something like it. They didn't tear down everything they had first, they just went out on some other ground and built something. I mean, I've got a friend of mine that has a 200 by 300 indoor thing in Banff, Idaho, John Roser, built in the 70s. It's got seating for 300 or 400 people, buck and choose, had rodeos in it. Kind of a dance hall and upstairs on one side, a little concession. He told me he finally quit insuring it because he couldn't afford to. The insurance company told him to take $3.8 million to rebuild. And so that's my only worry is that if we flatten a bunch of stuff that is working, I mean, I know there's things there that need fixed. There's a pig barn that's inadequate or could use some changing, but I just worry that we flatten all that and then we tie into this and we run out of money and then we're halfway down the creek and we're not across it. So I think it's a great idea. We need a new building. But I would hope we would look around. I know Twin Falls County, Idaho, they have some money just like it. They've got some grant money. They've had it for about 3 years and haven't done anything yet because they knew they didn't have enough to do with it. They do have a big pro rodeo, a huge fair, a big fair. And, but they would take the baby steps before they started tearing down. So I think it's a great idea. Hats off to everybody for getting the money. I know that it's a thankless job being a public official, even if you're well paid. So I'm not here to say that anybody doesn't know what they're doing, but by any means, but I think it would be a tragedy to tear it all down right away without really knowing what it's going to cost.
I think those are all valid points and the Fair Board needs to hear those too.
Okay,
That's.
And you do realize they have public meetings every
I
Monday
do.
at 6 p.m. So I haven't seen anybody in attendance at them. So
First
therefore,
Monday, not there.
yeah, first Monday of the month. And so please make sure that, you do reach out to those folks. You do help the conversation, not just be negative,
Yeah, I'm not trying to be
negativity
negative. I just
feeds on
wanted to
itself.
Talk
So.
about what I think would be.
But you do realize it is at the very beginning, there's a firm that will help work out the details so that we know what the 4.36 million can go to and how far across the finish line we can get. Rep Owens is also willing to help us secure some more funds to go with the project. So we aren't just without additional funding options to help us get us there. So we are aware of the big picture. We are aware that it takes a lot of funds and we're not going to go over scale from what we can do.
and Corey, one of the things in our role, and people call me about things, including this, and I'll say, please try to come to Fair Board meetings also or county court. But a lot of them, they told me that's it. So I do and will be representing the things people are telling me, including what you just said, to the Fair Board as well.
I just think like if you look at like Winnemucca, Nevada or Klamath or anywhere that's done it, everything they had there before is there and they took care of what they had. And they just went over here and did something else. So that's just my opinion, but I think we get a lot more bang for our buck to take care of what we've got, preserve the history of that side. I realize that big barn needs some fixing, but I don't think it would be real hard to And a little wing on there and force some concrete, take care of all the things that are there. But just my opinion, so I'm not trying to be negative. I just, those are my concerns, and I've heard a lot of the people have the same concerns. I cut down a bunch of mature trees and stuff in Harney County that just don't reappear very quickly. You know, so that's my position. So I'm not trying to be negative. I'm just saying that's how I feel. That's my concern. I'm with other people.
Well, Vince, I just wondered, how does the budget break down for something like this? If Fair Board goes, I want to do this project, they come forward and they bring in project and you guys approve the money? Or do they say, here's how much money we need for this project? Or do they just say, we want to build this? And you guys say, well, we'll get a bid or something on it? Or is that all the Fair Board and they come forward with the budget?
So as you're aware, we have a fair manager, who's the county employee. That county employee works with the fair board. So as we work with the firm, they will help work out those details of what the
And what's
bid
the firm?
package needs to be. The firm that did the original strategic
That's a
planning of
third
the
party
program,
firm
It's a
or
third
somewhere,
party
somewhere.
firm
Who does
from
the jail,
Portland.
it's architects that we contracted with,
Got
do
it,
our study.
okay.
So
Just like
Okay.
when we did the RV park, you work with a firm that comes up with the details so that you know what you're putting out to bid.
Okay.
And so
then that
it'll
goes
be,
public.
it'll be a process.
Yeah.
And so with these funds, DOS has said that as long as they're funds that are spent for the project that the money was granted to,
Uh-huh.
that it has to follow like, you know, the hiring practices and
Sure.
so all those things will be followed by the fair manager as these bids are put out. Those will have to be included in the bids. And so those are, you know, we're getting into the weeds here.
Has anybody
But-
put forward a project in kind yet from the Fair Board?
What do you mean?
Like, do they have a plan of some sort they want to do or come to you guys and say
Yeah,
this? is what we want
they
to do?
what that
have this-
Company did,
The specs
Years
that they
ago.
want the company to look at for the size of the building that was included in the original grant.
Mhm.
So that firm will look at what that structure,
The firm just handles some money though.
no, 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 no.
They do the
no,
engineering too?
Engineering,
Yeah.
they're not, we
Oh.
pay them to do the
Okay,
engineering.
so you guys are the budget people.
Yeah,
You
so
handle all the money. they don't
on
have to-
September 6th, there was a supplemental budget hearing. So the money that was acquired through the grants was placed into the fair fund.
Okay,
The
Cap-
county court
capital
is going to
outlay.
need to be very involved. Not
So-
to usurp, but to be very involved because the fair board has not done project management and et cetera. I hear what I think you're getting at, nor have we all the time either. We're going to need it professionally handled for sure.
does any of these projects go out for public comment then, or no? Is there any advertising in the budget at all for a public comment period of some sort, or?
We did,
here's our
we
project?
did advertise the supplemental budget hearing. It
Okay,
was advertised in public.
But that-
There's laws that
but
dictate.
for public comment or just?
But that
Yeah,
was
for-
just the
for
whole
public
amount of
comment,
money. It
yeah.
wasn't a breakdown.
No, it was for public comment of that supplemental budget.
And it showed how much it was gonna cost and all that.
No, it showed how much was received by the.
Oh, I
grant.
see. Oh, but it didn't show what the project was
No,
going to
it
be
doesn't.
or what it would cost.
this isn't capital outlay
There's no
line,
plan, no blue.
nothing's that far.
So if
There
you
is
want to
time.
read the original grant proposal that was submitted to the legislature, happy to.
I
provide
read
that
it a
to you.
while ago. I can't remember.
It's been a few years and it would be good to
But
have
that
public
was
comment.
what the
and then-
grant was
Sure,
issued for, and so
sure.
we do have to stay within the lines of
If I
that.
remember correctly, there was something about plumbing. Was there something for plumbing?
That was the,
Water?
that was the
Subject.
original million.
Yeah, and so is that a project all by itself that
No.
we're still
No,
working on?
It
Or did
all
get
ties
done?
together. So
Oh,
the million can be used alongside of these other projects. So you
Oh.
have three pots of money that you're using for that all complement each other for this project.
I see. Will these projects go out for a public comment period at all?
Well,
Probably
Through the
just the
fair board meeting,
overall
yeah.
plan when
But
it's more
not,
detailed.
but not like through the newspaper. I see like Valerie Purdy, she put something in the newspaper. There's a lot of things happening at the fairgrounds and she wanted to put some input in, looked like about what was going on.
but that's why it's an open public meeting. Those fair board
Sure.
meetings are official
Sure.
public meetings.
sure
They're
Valerie.
recorded.
Yeah.
So
She's
people
very
need
good about
to
this.
get in the
Like
room.
40
Been
years
involved. He's been involved out there for a long time.
Yeah, so she knows.
But
all about it.
things have changed and,
Yeah,
you know, as far as, and obviously, as far as the requirements. Times have changed. It's tough to get it.
yeah,
And if she refers to him, you know,
sure.
horse racing still available, but not.
Oh, yeah.
Not
Oh,
our
yeah.
time, not our time. of
Horse
year.
racing.
But
I get it.
there's so
yeah.
much to every story that,
I know.
Just-
Oh, it's a big project.
and the best place to get the information is the fair board.
The fair board. But basically, I'm just trying to find out how the money works. So if I had a project, I'm the fair board manager, I come in, I go, here's my project. You guys discuss it between you and your group, and then decide to fund the money or not fund the money, correct?
It's not that the money was decided by the legislature. The money
money's
has
there.
been allocated. In fact, Representative Owens helped us get across the finish line for getting those projects funded.
What a good man.
Yes, he is a good man. He's looking out for Harney County. And so
Yeah,
please just stay involved in the process as it moves forward.
Yeah.
But know that the majority of the heavy lifting will take place in those fair board meetings. But they'll be posted on the agenda. As you know, October meeting is usually the big fair recap. So there won't be a lot of discussion about this project that goes on at that meeting at that point, because you have to take the time to figure out what occurred at fair and what's going forward with fair stuff. And so give them some latitude to wrap fair up in the October meeting. And then, feel free to provide some public comment, but know that they aren't going to dive into the whole building issue when you only have so much time. And remember, these are volunteers. 4-hour meetings suck for anyone. So realize that they will be focusing the majority of their time on fair recap at the October meeting.
So we aren't gonna tear anything else down. there.
Nothing's occurring till the firm comes back with some blueprints and plans to move
And then-
forward.
I hear that what
Yeah,
I'm
no, I
hearing
see
is
it.
in addition to the fair board meetings, it would be good to have a
Full-blown meeting.
full-blown community meeting
yeah,
where more detail is provided,
Yeah.
more timing, outlook is provided. Is that what I'm hearing?
The fair board isn't planning on absurding any of that. You guys are being
We're not-
very
we're not
presumptuous
picking
in
on
that.
fair board.
Okay,
I'm
but
just
you're
trying
being
to figure out
very
the money.
presumptuous.
That's all we're
in this
doing.
piece.
The fair boards, they're doing
I-
great.
we didn't
Proud
have
of
another-
them out there.
It's a- it's a
I know,
great
but you're
rumor.
also stuck in the room.
Get the fact, get the facts. It's-
And
it's
that's
what
what
I- Yeah, that's what I think. You just get the facts.
Please
for-
take-
I'm sorry, I'm not very smart, but I'm still trying to understand the money.
Well, it's
What-
You
what
guys have the $4 million here in the
4.36.
in the county coffers.
county golf,
Mhm.
and so I come forward with the project. Do you guys discuss this, or does the money just come?
Well, it's gonna have to go out for a bid. We're gonna be aware
It's
of the
gonna
bid.
It's
have to have a
already-
lot more.
Okay,
So
Yeah.
then
that's what I wanted
then
to
it's
hear.
gonna, it's gotta get passed.
Yeah, no.
Going for the budget.
It's gonna be a lot.
What is that process?
Just like any other project that takes place, there's a process for it. If the fair board does anything,
What is it?
they decide in a public meeting, they vote on it as a body.
You guys,
it
what do
moves
you do?
Forward. We
I'm not worried.
We
about it.
appoint the fair board. It is appointed by the
What
county.
is this? By statute is, and they're pretty autonomous to
Sure,
to this court,
Okay.
but it is our grounds and our buildings,
Okay.
our property.
And
So
it's
we
our
wanna have a say in it.
employee.
Yeah, okay, that's what I wanted to know.
And there's an MOU between us. that-
Yeah, I'm not worried about. fair
That's
board.
being kind of tightened
What's
up
good?
and seeing that bring.
Tearing it down, but like, I was over there 2 weeks before the fair steer trimming. Taylor kid steer jumps out and drags him down the pavement 100 yards and the steer heads, they're down to the radio.
I think we're getting off
And-
topic
and so-
here for our meeting.
No, I just like to
I'm not
say
gonna
this
get into
why, because
kids
I got
getting
down
dragged
there and
down
got the steer
pavement.
pushed back in. Said, go shut the gate so we can keep him in. And the gate right in the center of the fairgrounds is gone. And he went right back out and headed to town. He made it to Robbins Equipment before I caught him on horseback. So
I don't-
that's
I
my
don't
only
think that
worry. It's
that's
been
a-
tearing down a lot of stuff,
Well,
just right around there. There has been some.
but
disruption.
have you brought that concern to the fair board that you think it needs a gate there? Please
I'd like
do,
to go
please
to the
do
meeting,
so. Okay, please
but
do
I
so.
haven't had a chance, and so that's why I came here today, because I think there was some.
I know, but
I heard there was stuff coming down. I saw a lot of stuff coming down and that concerned. me.
it's good to be concerned.
So I'm not here to offend anyone. I'm just here to talk about what I see and what my question.
What I see is whether it's fair board or county court will be involved and a professional is needed to manage and set the budget and provide this stuff, whether it's the architect or not. And that study, and that was a few years ago, and things, there may be additional or different needs and, tweaking. So, yeah, none of us, including fair board or county commissioners and county judge, are great project managers for a multi-million-dollar project without professional assistance.
Bill Wilbur's on there. Bill's, he's got similar concerns. And he was the project manager for the community center for a lot of projects downtown. I think he's a good person to have.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how the fair board's gonna decide who will do what, but
Yeah.
I know Bill's got that same interest, and I think he'd be a good person to watch over.
When does the firm come back with something?
As soon as they
They
get,
have to be engaged first. So
Yeah.
we just got September
They've gotta be
6th, just
reconnected.
prior to fair.
So
The funds
timeline wise,
were just put into the piggy bank.
Yeah.
So like I say,
what are we talking, a year, 10 years?
When does
the No.
money have to be,
the $1 million has a timeline to be spent.
That's for plumbing though, right? Or infrastructure, I mean,
Infrastructure with.
So it's water, sewer,
Right.
ADA compliance and concessions are the things that the first $1
Oh,
million
okay.
were allocated.
That's
That,
the first
that
one.
infrastructure down
And it has to be
the middle.
allocated by 2024, spent by 2026. The other pots of money do not have it.
I think your point though, Corey, on don't tear anything down till there's a phased way to do it, or it's, and decisions are fully made.
Yeah, I just hate to see stuff coming down and we're not, I hate to get the fair next year, and we don't have anything to set the fair with. and We don't have a building up. and we
But
don't-
that's where if you'd come to the fair board meetings, you would have heard some of the conversations that are taking place with the livestock committee of what transition could be like using the dry barn and other things. So please, like I say, engage that group in some of these conversations.
That's fine. and I-
Engage the
and I have-
livestock committee.
I have, and that's why I came here today, because I thought, right here's the head of it, I'd like to.
Well, we're
I
the
appreciate
head of
hearing
it,
it.
but the head doesn't run very good without volunteers. So it's the volunteers that serve below us, that serve with us, that we
Those-
can't do
and some of
without.
those Concerns were from volunteers that I've had a lot of people that are volunteers at the fair that were concerned about it, so that's what I'm doing.
I appreciate hearing it. Thank you.
There's an MOU that between the county and the fair board that expired in June this year, it's gonna be 23. We have another one ready that's got a lot far more detail. Fair board's looking it over. And we can't, and we'll come back and that'll spell out a lot of what, it's one thing I want to get in place before this money starts flowing.
I'm
Where
already
they know what they can do without coming to us and where we want them to come to us. To make this all legit.
The Oregon statutes on fair boards are really aimed for the very high population metro type of fair boards. You know, these people are bonded, they bring money to the table, they're great at and then they kind of own the fairgrounds on behalf of the county, unlike us. The county owns the fairgrounds, the county, the fair board are in our community, we don't have people of means of that type. So, but yet the statute is what it is. So, yeah, we got to work through things.
Thank you, I appreciate your time, I'm not here to offend anyone.
I think we're the same concerns. I think we all have the same concerns. It's a lot of money and we don't want to throw it away. I don't say throw it away.
Yeah, I just,
But
like I say.
we want to make sure we get the best bang out of it. Works for everybody.
are you guys thinking the only public comment period would be just at the fair board meeting?
Well, I think that you really do need to start working through that body. I know I haven't seen either individuals,
But
come to.
Is
do
that
those
the only way you
meetings.
want to do it? As a,
Well,
as
I-
the.
my concern is if I want people to help serve on boards in this community, I don't care if it's fair board or any other board. If you sit there and work around them constantly, what happens to those people? Do they stay in place? Do they want to serve?
Did Valerie Purdy work around Summers? She's been down there for 40 years.
I'm just saying, please be a little bit, aware that these volunteers, no matter what board that they serve on, are such, they're volunteers. And
Right.
they are going to do their best to do a good service to this
I
community.
feel as though the
And so
community has
don't-
some concerns.
Don't worry that they aren't going to listen to you. I think that
Oh, that's
you're already trumping that they aren't going to listen to you, and
We didn't say that. We're
okay,
just here to
well,
say
but
that we
he's
have-
saying that he feels like he needs to go over them already, so,
I'm not putting words in anyone's mouth here.
okay, then please work with the body that will be working with the
I have
firm,
one
that will
question.
be working with
Are
the
you guys gonna
town.
put this out for public comment through the paper or otherwise besides the fair board?
It can be.
It
I
can
think we
be?
should.
Will you guys do that?
What,
The fair board should have public
the,
meetings
So
on
the
this.
fair board has to bring you that idea.
Well, don't we work with them?
well, it
I'm
could be a
just trying to
joint,
plan process, guys.
public meeting of the fair board, the county court for general public comment.
But
It's
they're an
different
open
than their
public
regular meeting.
That's.
Is that what, is that what I'm thinking? Where people,
What's your
I'm not sure the whole
concern?
community does.
Really?
I'm sure they don't.
They, there's two of us here.
I'm sure they don't.
Commissioner Doyle? Do you know the ORS that you're referring to?
I have it at home. I don't recall it.
You familiar with it?
I can
I'm not gonna-
email you. I got a bunch of files at home. in my work.
Land on my desk.
If I could get that.
Yeah, it's something to digest. Yeah.
And then the MOU, the current MOU, can I get that through the clerk or?
Yeah, it's in the clerkship.
Um.
It's, don't ever feel you can't come here for public comment.
I was just gonna say,
We gotta hear.
it is frustrating to any board. That, they start a process and they meet and they talk on it for 6 months to a year, and then people keep coming in that are not engaged. It sets the project back and it raises the.
Sure.
So, if there's a group that wants to be involved in the meetings from the beginning.
Sure.
So the
I'm just
process-
asking about public
I'm
comment.
I'm not throwing at it
Sure.
at anybody. I'm
There's
just saying,
public
it does
comment
get
related to
frustrating to rehash stuff 6 months that you just went.
It's a big project,
It
seems
is.
like, and it's something the whole community comes down for lots of times for fairs, a big deal. It's a big space for lots of people. It just seems like something a lot of people would have an opinion about, in my opinion.
Like a jail, we had a public meeting for,
Sure.
and I'm hope the fair board would do the same thing for,
Yeah,
and that was
yeah.
just, and there'll be more.
Just
Then even
like-
after that meeting, I've had people call that are neighbors. Real concerned. Well, they think it's gonna start happening tomorrow. It's 2 or 3
Right.
years away too, and there will be public process.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for all you do. We're not here to be.
Yeah.
negative or disrupt anybody's focus.
Not
Ask
big
questions about it. Those are all things I heard from a lot of other people. That it was gonna come down right away and get the date. And so realize it's been years, something doesn't mean it's true. So that's why we came to the meeting today, but I guess.
So
I
you'll get
would
more
like to say
detail.
that. I would hope that they don't tear anything else down before everybody knows exactly what's gonna happen.
And I think you'll get that detail at the fair board.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other public comment. Again,
Commissioner Shellman, have you heard anything about the insurance in that lovely fire map?
So there's a hotline that you can reach, and in fact, I'm going to post some papers from the fire marshal's meeting the other night. They do have a kind of an insurance paper that talks about the hotline. And so folks can reach that hotline, talk to the Division of Financial Regulations, if they have a concern about their insurance needs. And so until now, they really haven't been teed up to work on the conversation. They now have a hotline to deal with it. And so something I can have posted on the county's website, as well as I'm just going to print copies and leave them just at the clerk's desk. So if folks come in and have a question, they can hand people the information. And so homeowners do need to contact the line directly and see if there's an
Business
opportunity.
owners. Same thing.
Same thing. Anybody with a insurance concern, because I've had a lot of people reach out to me. It's hard with the insurance companies because unless there's proof that these maps that were created by the state were actually used to increase the rates, there's not a lot of conversation past that. If there's proof of that, the conversation is pretty wide open, but having proof of that from the business or homeowner standpoint is going to be the challenge.
So where will you be putting out that hotline information?
I received it at the Thursday meeting that the State Fire Marshal's office held here in the county. Chad Hawkins came and did a presentation for Senate Bill 762, and he provided the flyer for that hotline.
So how will we be getting that word out on the hotline,
I said it'll be posted on the website.
county website?
And so that's what we can provide to folks right now. It really is in the state's hands as far as how they'll be service through that, but they are poised to take people's questions and to try to work on their concern with their insurance companies.
Okay. More public comment. Right on schedule. I do have one service award for the county and she's not in the room, but she's listening. So Carrie Opie, congratulations on 5 years of service. Started with the county on September 8th, 2017. And I remember, because then next week she said I have to go to Pendleton Roundup. So congratulations to Carrie in 5 years.
Congratulations.
All right, our 11 a.m. new business topic, Holly Mondo, project manager. Community-based water planning.
Hi, Holly.
Hi,
Hi, everyone.
welcome.
Thank you. I do have some slides, so I don't know if that's something that we can put up here. If not, I'm happy to just talk.
Nice to have them.
Yes, you need a PowerPoint machine.
How is this being, who's
So
projecting?
this is Zoom. I remember this Zoom right here.
Mhm.
Do you have Zoom?
So if I just email you the slides real quick.
Sure.
You can just pull it up there.
Or I let you. Pull it. So I'm not real technologically smart.
Sounds
just-
And what's your email?
So Pete dot, lowercase, Pete right here. Pete dot Reynolds.
Uh-huh.
At CO.
And CO.
One.
dot-
Yes.
Okay.
Take a little bit with the signs.
Yeah. Looks like it's through.
All right. Yeah.
That's okay.
There you go. Commissioner Darrell, it would be part of it.
Thank you. You know, sometimes if people go to the YouTube or wherever they can. I asked if we could fix it so they can see. Whatever. There's a chair there if you want to.
Okay. No, I'm standing.
All right.
All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Holly Mondo. I am the project manager for the Community-Based Water Planning Collaborative here in the Harney Basin. Have been project manager for almost 3 years now, and happy to be here today. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
We can go ahead to the next slide. All right, so just a quick orientation for folks that haven't been involved in our planning process. We started place-based planning back in 2016 after the department and the county realized that groundwater is significantly over allocated, which led us to the GIVGAC designation, or the Greater Harney Valley Groundwater Area of Concern. We call it the GIVGAC because that is way too much to say. So that was really the driver of our place-based planning process. Something to note, During this time, there was a moratorium placed on new groundwater permits. Again, after the department realized this over allocation was happening. Existing permits continued to be developed. We'll kind of get more into that during the slideshow there. We adopted a phased approach to our planning process, which was unique to other place-based planning groups. So as a little background, place-based planning is a new program with the Oregon Water Resources Department, relatively new. We were one of 4 pilot projects. So the guinea pigs, basically, to see how this program would work. So we were one, Upper Grand Ron, Lower John Day, and the Mid-Coast all conducted place-based planning projects. We were unique because we took a phased approach to our planning. The other 3 groups did groundwater and surface water at the same time and created their integrated water resources plan together. For us, because groundwater was such a big issue, is still a big issue out here, we wanted to figure out groundwater first and then move on to surface water. And really, we did this so that we could make sure that we would have a voice in the rulemaking process that is to ensue further. Oops, sorry, that was a little too far. So we started groundwater planning back in 2016. We completed groundwater planning just this summer, July 2022. And a lot of folks in the community have been wondering why it's taken us so long. And to that, we started from a blank slate. This was a very data sparse area when we first started planning. Our groundwater planning process happened simultaneously with a huge groundwater study conducted by OWRD and USGS. Then with COVID, things got pushed back with getting the results of that study published. So we still made it. We prevailed. It might have taken us a little bit longer than we would have liked, but here we are. We've started phase 2, which is surface water planning. We started back in August. And we're hoping that we can complete surface water and have an integrated water resource plan by February 2024. So just over, 18 months-ish. Mark, before I move on, did you want to add anything on why we did groundwater first?
Thanks, Ollie. I mean, most of the board understands back in 2015, 2016, when the new rules came on in April 2016, the Water Resource Department said they were forming in Iraq 1 year after the groundwater study was published. The groundwater study was published in this year. So we targeted that Iraq in order to make sure that we have an opportunity to figure out what management of groundwater would come, hopefully by implementing some of the tools that we piloted. That was the main reason we segregated surface water from groundwater, to make sure that the community, the courts, and all involved would have that opportunity to act. That'll be coming April this next year.
Thanks, Mark. And Karen, did you want to add anything? No. Okay. All right, next slide, please. Thank you. So this is further orientation. You'll hear me say collaborative, coordinating committee, strategy team throughout my presentation. So I just wanted to make sure that folks were aware of what I mean by those things. I realize now that this text is a little small, so please bear with me. The collaborative, CBWP collaborative, water plan collaborative, is composed of representatives from various groups, all with a stake in groundwater specifically. We have people from local, state, and federal and tribal governments. We have environmental interests, business interests, agricultural, residents and landowners, and tribal representatives. So we've done our best to keep a diverse set of folks on the collaborative so that they can have their voice heard. I will say that we did run into some challenges along the way because of how long our planning process took with groundwater to keep people engaged and to keep folks coming to the table. I'm confident with the group that we had for the remainder of our groundwater planning process. Once we got consensus on that, I do think that we had a representative interest. Of course, I wish that there could have been more folks in the room, but we did our best with what we had. So the collaborative is the main body that's tasked with completing the integrated place-based water plan. that accounts for in-stream and out-of-stream needs. We also have what's called a coordinating committee that's composed of collaborative members, representative of various interest groups. And really they're tasked with process design, building meeting agendas and schedules, and providing input on proposals. So they really act as a sounding board for me. If there's something that I want to bring to the collaborative, I run it by the coordinating committee first to make sure that's the right approach, and that I'm not missing anything. Strategy team is composed of all the paid staff. So our conveners, watershed council and county court, myself, our technical consultant, our facilitator, and department staff. So OWRD department staff. They were mainly tasked with navigating any conflicts that arise within the collaborative, and approaching some sensitive topics, making sure we're in alignment with the legislature, and that our messaging out to the community is right. So really the coordinating committee and the strategy team were my first defenses. And then lastly, our working groups. This will make more sense as we get into the steps, but working groups were also composed of collaborative members who volunteered their extra time to dedicate researching and writing reports on certain subject matter to help us create our groundwater plan. So we had a working group dedicated to ecology, vegetation management, agriculture, and exempt uses, or mainly domestic wells. And so again, they were tasked with generating our step 2 and step 3 reports, identifying critical issues that we wanted to address, and proposing solutions to address those issues. Next slide. So the way we generated our groundwater resource issues, I should say there's a caveat with this presentation. I made this presentation as if we went through our planning process in a linear fashion, where we had our collaborative, we did research, we generated a list of issues, we then generated a list of strategies, and then we wrote our groundwater plan. That's how we wanted the process to go. That is not how the process went. So just follow along for now. And then this is gonna reflect as if it happened linearly. And I will actually tell you how it happened in reality at the end, but it would be too confusing if we started off jumping back and forth. So the first thing we attempted to do was create our list of issues. So what does the community want to address with their groundwater plan? We had many ideas. So the first thing we did was we held a summit. So this was a 2-day summit where collaborative members developed a list of solutions first, and then they also developed some ideas for issues. This was really early on. This was back in 2018. We also generated our issues list through what we heard from working groups and from their reports. So the working groups that focused on agricultural use, ecological resources, exempt uses, examined and explored issues associated with their focus. We took our current groundwater conditions and our future groundwater needs. These were 2 steps that were outlined that we needed to check off with place-based planning. So step 1, build a collaborative. Step 2, figure out what your current groundwater use is and what the current conditions are. Step 3, what are your future groundwater needs? And in theory, those 2 steps are the big ones. Those are the ones where you're supposed to figure out what your issues are. So we did our best here. Through doing this, you can go to the next slide. Through doing those 3 things, having a summit, having working groups, having those step 2 and 3 reports drafted, we created a big groundwater issues list. We realized early on that since groundwater cannot be directly observed, the issues that we identified arise from direct effects felt by groundwater users, such as loss of domestic well production, loss of sufficient water to irrigate, loss or reduction of production of stock water, and lack of information on the groundwater resource, its uses and its management. And third, concerns about the management of equitable use of groundwater. So these were our initial buckets that we started categorizing issues into. Next slide. From there, we extracted a bit more and started really honing in on the issues and the ones that we wanted to address. So we took our first categorization, we moved it into this categorization. So we generally categorized issues as over allocation or groundwater level declines, ecosystem health and protection, water security for groundwater users, groundwater governance and accountability, infrastructure improvements and necessary upgrades, agricultural and community economic stability, climate change and climate cycles and effects on groundwater, and incomplete information about groundwater resources. Within each of these categories, we had at least 15 issues under each of those categories. So that was a lot to parse through. You can go to the next slide. During this time, we were also trying to make things happen. We were also trying to take steps to make changes out here. We wanted people's voices to be heard. And in order for us to do that, we were trying to get things implemented. That's another reason why our process took a long time. We were not only planning, researching, coming up with issues, coming up with strategies, we were also doing all these extra things to set up a road that we could go down to implement. So while we were parsing through our issues list, we were also sending out a questionnaire to see what was going on with domestic well users. We wanted to know if they were experiencing water declines in their wells, what they were doing to respond to those wells, how much money they've spent in doing so, information like that, which we later used to draft a legislative concept that is now turned into a House bill and is passed for a domestic well fund, which we'll get to in a second. We also did a feasibility study with Anderson Perry and Associates to figure out if it was feasible for alternative water delivery, alternative water supply, what that might look like and where it might work in the best area. As I just mentioned, we built a legislative concept with the help of Rep. Owens here that got turned into House Bill 3092. And it establishes a cost share program for folks in the basin that have experienced issues with their wells because of the over allocation issue. So that really was born out of people coming to the collaborative, talking about what was going on, sending out this questionnaire, and us taking that and making things happen. We created a website to reach out to more of the community, harneyswaterfuture.com. And lastly, we got step 2 and step 3 reports from all of our working groups. So ecological, vegetation management, agricultural, and exempt uses all wrote step 2 and step 3 reports, which was another unique thing for our place-based planning process that didn't happen in other groups. Next slide. Okay, this is going to be kind of weird. You can just keep clicking through those. So this is our issues list. These are the issues that we decided that we would address with our groundwater plan. It took us a really long time to parse this issues list down and to get it to a point where people could agree on it. We wanted to make sure that we were hearing everybody in the room. We wanted to make sure that this was representative of what was actually happening in the basin. Wanted to make sure that these were within the bounds that we could address under place-based planning and within Oregon water law. And we ended up having a total issues list of 33. This started with probably 70 something. We combined similar issues, combined similar ideas. We took some out that were just out of our scope. We really wanted to focus on the main things that we could change. One more click. Yeah. So we achieved consensus on this issues list back in November 2021. After that happened, we did go back and edit a little bit, did some wordsmithing just to make things a bit clearer for folks. But this was a huge milestone for us. This was when things really started moving for the groundwater planning process. And this was kind of the missing link when we were planning. We were kind of running in circles a lot. A lot of people felt frustration about the feeling that we weren't making progress. This was a huge check mark for the collaborative. This meant that we could move on to proposing strategies or solutions to address each of these issues. Next slide. So after we achieved consensus on the issues list, our discussions moved into desired conditions for the basin. So yes, we realized that this is an issue out here. What do we want the basin to look like? If we had total control, if we had magical powers, what would we want the basin to look like 10 years from now, 15 years from now? We held small group meetings with folks from around the basin to talk about what people hope the basin looks like in the future, or what they hope future basin conditions will be. These happened over Zoom. We talked with people specific to Virginia Valley, specific to the Weaver Springs area, specific to Sylvie's River area. So we tried really hard to hear from folks that weren't necessarily in the room, but we wanted to still make sure that their voices were being heard. We talked about desired conditions for both out of stream and in stream uses, which are detailed in the plan. And we identified, well, in a linear way of thinking, right? We identified issues. We talked about what we want the basin to look like. And then we developed strategies to both address those issues and reach these desired conditions. Next slide. So for us to build our strategy list, we, at that summit that I mentioned earlier, folks submitted some things that we called one-pagers, which were basically their ideas for solutions to groundwater issues and their approaches to achieve desired conditions. We had more than 70, I think it ended up being 78 ideas for strategies and solutions. Next slide. All of those ideas were organized by topic into these categories, or we called them bins. Anything, all the concepts that addressed similar issues, we categorized into these buckets. So reducing agricultural irrigation, addressing domestic well issues, conserving GDEs or groundwater dependent ecosystems, measuring and reporting groundwater use, improving accountability, and lastly, collecting and sharing information. The collaborative, oops.
Yep.
The collaborative discussed all 70 plus ideas, bin by bin, bucket by bucket, and then decided whether to develop those ideas out further into strategies. Once developed and in list form, the collaborative spent a hefty amount of time refining, editing, wordsmithing, all the language to make sure that the intention of each strategy was clear and was based on both community knowledge and the best available science that we had at the time. In addition to strategies, the collaborative also drafted objectives and recommended actions to highlight the overarching goal of each strategy and the potential paths to achieve said goal. So we had objective, strategy, recommended actions. So if this strategy gets implemented, the objective is to point out what that strategy will achieve. So it took us a very, very long time to finish our strategy list. You can go to the next slide. That's fine, you can stay there. Yeah. More than a strategy list, our list of strategies became a suite of actions, a menu of actions that could be taken here in the basin as an integrated set of efforts. So if we implement one strategy, it's likely that another one has to do with that. So once we realized that, we did a second categorization. This is kind of confusing. We've categorized a lot and organized a lot and redone things and done things differently. And kind of some of the time it felt like we were in a car and the transmission was slipping. We were just like chugging along, trying to figure out how to do this. Again, pilot program, we're the ones working out all the kinks for this. So, as I mentioned, our strategy list can be looked at as an integrated set of efforts. And while each of the strategies represent a potential helpful groundwater management tool or application, they don't exist in the abstract or alone. We wanted to reflect that once we started writing our groundwater plan. Each strategy's effectiveness is impacted by existing conditions of water availability, water allocation, water law, and customary uses. Also, while each of the individual strategies can improve groundwater management, none of the strategies alone can ensure groundwater uses will reach sustainable levels. Some of the strategies focus on addressing immediate effects of overallocation, while others try to address root causes of why this issue exists. So again, while each individual strategy is important, an overarching and integrated approach to applying the strategies to conserve groundwater in the Harney Basin, we developed. Next slide. So this is the categorization regime that really matters, and this is what you'll see documented in our plan. I wanted to give you some background so it was really understood all the work that went into getting to this point. By categorizing our strategies as foundational, operational, tactical, or organizational/infrastructure, the relationships between strategies is apparent. The logic here is that foundational strategies are those that protect a balance of groundwater uses. Operational strategies provide the information that enables decisions to be made and can facilitate transactions. Tactical strategies are those that propose specific actions to address individual issues associated with the overallocation issue in Harney Basin. And organizational are really those strategies that we need for support, oversight, and enforcement of actions. So it's useful to consider how all these different strategy types fit together. And again, that's kind of how organizational and infrastructure comes in. Those strategies in organizational and infrastructure support, coordinate, and provide oversight to make sure that our strategies are actually accomplishing the goal of sustainable groundwater conditions. With this strategy categorization approach, the collaborative was able to better articulate sequencing and the interrelationships of strategies, and therefore understand how strategies might be linked in time. Next slide.
Holly, so was that approach with those definitions unique to our collaborative, or is
Yes.
that stand? Okay.
Everything we did was unique.
Okay. Just want to make sure.
Yes, so none of the other groups did that way. We all kind of, each of the 4 groups came up with their implementation approach. I think ours is the best, but I'm biased. So once we had that categorization, then we wanted to focus on, okay, well, how are we going to make sure that these strategies actually get implemented? Sure, we've categorized them 10 different ways, and we can show which ones are really important. But it was very important to the collaborative that we make sure whatever plan we wrote does not just sit on the shelf. We wanted to make sure that we proposed an approach for the department to consider with how to actually get these strategies implemented. Next slide. So we developed what we called an implementation framework. We also called this a decision support tool. We needed to have one place where the collaborative could look at everything that we've done to date in one place. So this implementation framework was made on basically a big Excel spreadsheet. And it was a compilation of all the critical issues, all the strategies that addressed that critical issue with their category as foundational, operational, tactical, or organizational. Desired outcomes for that specific issue and strategy, what the recommended actions were or are to achieve desired outcomes, what the budget and funding opportunities are to support implementation, who's responsible for carrying out the recommended actions, what's the timing? Does this need to happen now? Can this be pushed off 10 years? What's the strategy status? As I mentioned, some of our strategies were being implemented as we were planning. So is the strategy ongoing, not started, completed? Whether the strategy is applicable to the Harney Basin Rule Advisory Committee, the rulemaking process, how we can make sure our voice is being heard there. We also put in ideas for how we can measure if the strategy is working, if it's working to accomplish our goal, and what we would measure for. So this was all in one spot. It was a huge document, but this was also a turning point for the collaborative to be able to see all their work in one spot and figure out what the next steps were for implementation. All information in this implementation framework, which during your review of the plan, you'll be able to access, is for consideration. It's not anything set in stone. These were ideas. This wasn't a document that we got consensus on or even attempted to get consensus on. We just wanted to spot all the information in one spot so that we could look at it all together. Next slide. Okay, so once we had our implementation framework, we had another aha moment that we don't need to spend so much time delineating where strategies should take place, give a specific timeline as to when that should happen, but we can be broader. There we go. So, given the number and breadth of proposed strategies, it was important to develop a general notion of which strategies to implement at one time. The focus of implementation, and you'll see in our groundwater plan, is on those strategies that can make the most difference in the shortest amount of time. And the significance of reducing irrigation groundwater use is balanced with protecting the other benefits from groundwater dependent uses. So this was an aha moment for us. And then next slide. So we recognize that we could build these buckets near term, midterm, long term, and that's our implementation approach. We could suggest to the department which of our strategies we think should be implemented in the near term, which ones we should start working on, but can be implemented in the midterm and in the long term. So for us, near-term strategies are those that will make the most difference if they are initiated or have the possibility of being initiated within the next 3 years. Midterm, in the next decade, so years 4 to 10, there will need to be significant progress on these strategies, and they will result in decreased groundwater use. And then long-term, over the long term, 10 years and beyond, there are strategies that will either take longer to develop support for or need more deliberation. Next slide.
I guess I had a question there. Do we have that long?
Do we have that long?
4 to 10 years for midterm to where
I think that with,
we're not getting worse?
yeah. So I think with implementing the strategies that we want to implement in the near term and in the midterm, our long-term strategies have to do more with infrastructure. And for example, one of our long-term strategies is looking at assessing fees for groundwater use. That's going to need a lot of conversation. Even if we decided on that today, it wouldn't have a lot of effect in the short term. So I think you'll see as we move through that near-term and midterm strategies are really like where the action's
Where
at.
it's at.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. So here is a list of our near-term strategies. So again, this is the categorization regime that you'll see in the plan that really matters, and the one that took us a very long time to develop and have everybody on board for. So I've listed out our near-term strategies here. You can see on the left side of the screen what the status is of all those. And you'll note that many of these we've already started. We've already started working towards, which is another unique thing for our program that a lot of the other groups can't also say. I've starred some that we think are pretty creative and unique. The first one is looking at developing alternative crops, looking at monitoring and inventorying groundwater dependent ecosystems, exploring remote sensing of groundwater use, measuring groundwater use, using less water through technology, supporting a groundwater prep program, building an understanding of voluntary treatments and whether or not they're feasible for this area, and looking to improve well construction and permit standards. So this looks all neat and nice up here, and I'm presenting on it, but this was messy. This was hard for us to get here, for us to categorize them in this way. And it took us months and months to get to this point. But I just want to again call attention to the fact that we're already working really hard here. And we will continue to do so. Next slide. So again, these are our midterm ones. You'll note that the status of these is more often not started. There are some ongoing scattered in there. But these are for years 4 to 10. So the creative, unique ones they're all creative and unique, but calling attention to the ones that stand out, evaluating well standards for the Harney Basin, exploring a groundwater market, and then working with OWRD to address abandoned wells, which we have already started talking about how we're going to do that. We've also, we partnered with a consulting firm to explore what a groundwater market might look like out here and whether or not it's feasible. So we still haven't decided what we think would be best and what we want to recommend there, but we have done work for that as well.
So when you talk about a groundwater market, is that some people have to buy the water in order to use it? Is that correct?
Kind of. There are like many different ways you can set up a groundwater market. The one that Aspect Consulting that they thought was most feasible was to set up different banks, different areas. So yeah, you could buy water from one area. I'm not explaining this correctly.
Couple options for you.
Yeah.
The main option was whoever has a current groundwater certificate permit would be given so many shares, equal what, how many acres you had or something like that. And it would be declining share principal in the areas where we know we got to use up for. But if you did not have any groundwater, did not have a groundwater certificate, and you needed more groundwater, you could purchase from somebody that had shares. So if you already have groundwater, you will not need to purchase them to maintain your irrigation. But the intent of it is in the next 10, 20, 30 years to have a declining share. So less groundwater gives you the basic.
One other question. I'm new to this, but I bought a farm a year ago that has a 92 certificate. Got like 400 gallons of in and out of that since then. A week ago, it broke section. Run one bit instead of two. I mean, right now, the way it works, if I'm right, is you can't tell somebody with the junior water right to shut off, so we've got water again, correct?
Current water law now is if you have a senior water right and you believe a junior water right is impeding on the water that you can use, you file a complaint with the department. The department would come out and do an injury assessment, or also what they would do is they'd make you go deeper. So even if you have the most senior water right, you have to go to the depth of the aquifer in order to make sure that you are fully achieving the water that's available to you. So short answer, nah, you're not going to go down. Critical groundwater designation basin could do regulation by prior appropriation dating. So if the department comes in and says, we got to say X amount of water here, they would specifically at a priority date and they start shutting them off. Does that bring your well back up? Probably not. It's still better than
Thanks. Next slide. Lastly, our long-term strategies. So making sure that whatever water we conserve stays in the ground. We don't know how to do that yet, but it's something that we want to figure out. And then, as I just mentioned, exploring groundwater use fees. So these are more discussion based for now until we can figure out an approach. Next slide. And you can click through those. So With our strategies that we developed, we also wanted to make sure that we were staying in line with the integrated water resource strategy from the state of Oregon. So part of those strategies for the state of Oregon are understanding water resources today. I think we have a very good understanding of what's happening out here. Understanding in-stream and out-of-stream needs, check. Understanding the coming pressures that affect our needs and supplies, check, thanks to our working groups, and meeting Oregon's in-stream and out-of-stream needs. This should be like a half check, right? Our plan is not going to solve all the problems, but it can be a great help to figuring out how to solve the problems. We don't have all the answers. We identified issues that we could have an effect on. And for the purposes of our plan, with our strategies, I think that we will meet the in-stream and out-of-stream needs that we identified. Not fully, but in a big way, a help in a big way. Next slide. So then our groundwater plan. So we did all this really linearly, right? Our process was great, didn't have any speed bumps or anything. And we were able to have our first draft of our groundwater plan back in January 2022. We circulated that out. We got edits back. We sent out another draft in March 2022. And that same kind of process followed until July, once we achieved consensus. So when we received edits on a groundwater plan, we compiled them and addressed each comment one by one. After about the third round of editing, we realized that there wasn't enough transparency in the editing process that we had set up. So people wanted to know, well, if I'm making a suggestion and it doesn't get into the plan, why? What's the reason there? So we added transparency to our process after receiving that feedback from collaborative members. And then we achieved consensus in July. And that was also a big milestone for us, right? We started back in 2016. It's now 2022, and we finally have a document that outlines all the work that we've done to date. In August 2022, we submitted our plan to the plan review team with the Oregon Water Resources Department. And we are getting ready to circulate the plan out for public comment period. So those two last things, August 22 and October 22, this is another unique thing that we have the opportunity for in Harney. Generally, the plan review team won't review a plan until it's integrated. So until it has both groundwater and surface water in there. We just have groundwater right now. We worked with the state, we worked with the Oregon Water Resources Department, I should say, to create a process so that our plan could be reviewed. So that in 2 or 3 years from now, we don't have to go back and edit the groundwater plan. We also wanted to make sure that we checked all the boxes for place-based planning so that once we do have our surface water plan, we can integrate them and be ready to go with presenting to the Oregon Water Resources Commission. So the Water Resources Department has not done that for other groups, so we're special. Next slide.
Who's the plan review team?
So thanks. The plan review team is made up of a bunch of different agency folks they take about 90-ish days to run through the plan, make sure science is sound, make sure that we are working within the bounds of Oregon water law, and really making sure that we're not suggesting anything too outlandish. So it's people from Oregon Water Resources Department, Fish and Wildlife, NRCS, DEQ, the Department of Environmental Quality, and OHA. Yeah. And we should get those results, like their comments, back mid-November. So then the other thing is the public comment period. So we are circulating our groundwater plan out for public comments. So we would love to have community members read that and submit comments to us specifically on strategies, specifically on whether they can support the plan. If they think the community could support the plan, that's of utmost importance to the collaborative, is that their plan is for the community by the community. So that will start October 1st, public comment period. Okay, so now our groundwater plan. There are 10 chapters in our groundwater plan and a list of appendices to supplement your reading. It is about 80 pages. I've heard that it is a long read, but it's easy to read and makes sense. So that's good. We have a couple chapters that kind of describe the background information of the collaborative. We have a chapter that describes the basin in general, one that describes the planning process. We have some chapters that highlight the current groundwater conditions as we were planning, what the groundwater uses are, what our groundwater issues are that we identified, what desired conditions are, our suite of tools and strategies developed, our approach for implementation. We talk about adaptive management principles as well. And then lastly, we conclude with what we think state recognition of the plan should mean. Next slide. So I mentioned that we have just started surface water planning. We are currently reaching out to folks in the basin to come to the table. We still have folks from our groundwater planning process that are still at the table and aren't leaving anytime soon, but we want more voices in the room. We want more folks that have a stake in surface water. So doing a lot of outreach and starting to build a shared understanding of what information on surface water we have and what the picture for surface water looks like in the basin. We have applied for funding to support staff and feasibility studies. We have a schedule for surface water that breaks up all those steps into certain time blocks. And again, we have our estimated completion date. So when our plans will be integrated in February 2024. Thank you.
Questions, Roland?
It's just a quick one. So
Yeah.
you have a plan, the group got together and developed a plan.
Yes.
Then now the attempt is implementation. You mentioned having some monitoring goal and some objectives. Who would be responsible for keeping up with that? So
Mhm.
often there's a lot of effort at the front end, and then things sort of peter out. You don't have continuation. What would ensure that there is follow through to make sure that what the steps and plans are coming in and are being paid attention to? And
Yes.
monitored?
Yes, so we have several strategies that outline the need for more capacity with the state. So essentially, now that we have our plan, we go to the Water Resources Commission, present our plan in a similar fashion that I just did, and they give us the stamp of approval. And then with that, we are not really sure what that means. What we hope that means is that they'll take our strategies and start working on them. So some of our strategies have to do with adding capacity to certain state agencies and departments so that monitoring and measuring can actually happen. That specific strategy, measuring and reporting, which you'll see, is very long. And we worked with the Oregon Water Resources Department a lot to make sure that that was a strategy that could actually happen. It's going to be up to, that landowner and likely the department.
So, and just a little bit here, the way I think this plan is successful in implementation does not just sit on this shelf. Is that the court, the community, the agricultural enter into a volunteer agreement with the water resource community. So there's two ways for us to start using less water in the basin. One is a critical groundwater designation. And then phase two, that's a contested case where the department will come in and say, hey, you're out of bounds by we think this much. Therefore, we're going to recommend that you shut off this much. But it's not going to be a recommendation. They'll come off and shut them off. They'll shut them off by priority date, which priority date is probably not the best social, ecological, or even economic way to shut off water. Because we have senior water right holders that have old dates and new dates, good ground and bad ground. And the data, that priority doesn't always make that difference. So my goal is that the community will enter into volunteer agreements with the state. The way this plan is successful is that the tools that are put out in this plan are implemented by our agricultural community through a volunteer agreement. That's what will give it legs, Tony. So also, when we look at a volunteer agreement, what we're asking for is flexibility in how we manage that water. Yes, we're gonna have to use less water. But in order to use less and maintain a vibrant agricultural community the best we can within the resource, we're gonna need a lot of flexibility. With that flexibility is gonna come accountability. So a lot of things that you see in the plan that some of our agricultural community members even mind or measuring reporting more this. At first, we don't want to do there. But we actually want flexibility in how we manage, we're gonna have accountability. So we're gonna ask the department to make sure that we look at all illegal water use. We're gonna have to have a robust way to be responsible for the amount of water that we're actually using. Because we're gonna have to use less. So the main thing is a volunteer agreement that's never been successful in the state of Oregon. Is what we're gonna ask our community and others to do for the water resource commission. I hope, Tony.
Yeah, it's just, if there are gonna be metrics, then somebody has to be responsible. It's kind of been my experience, and if you don't say you're going to keep track of this, then it doesn't happen.
Human nature doesn't play out real good on the volunteer stuff. I well, and you quit doing what I'm doing. But I guess that's my concern too, is, you know, just like in the Clan Basin right now, you've got told all those guys to shut off. And you know, he's a wealthy man and runs, you know, 30, 40,000 head of cattle nationwide, but he said, Dwayne Mark just had his sick his attorney on him and said, I'm gonna keep on keeping on, and he has. Most people around him shut off. But, so I don't know what you do about that. It's a state, I guess the state fights them in court over that.
So you're gonna have to stick up a carrot, I think, for it. So those that do not want to be part of the volunteer agreement will be held to the critical groundwater station and regulation. And the thing about the volunteer agreement is we could propose, don't quote these numbers, these are coming from me, not the collaborative. Say the community wanted to reduce groundwater use by 3% a year for the next 10 years. So you'd reduce groundwater by 30%. Hypothetically, through farmer math, that would reduce the rate of decline by 7%. What that also does with the community is it allows us in agricultural to develop faith in this city. So what we're doing above ground actually manifests itself in below ground. We know we got a real issue. If we reduce 30% or later decline, you know, reduces 50%, hey, we got a base understanding, or vice versa. So, but what you say is, if you have somebody that's not gonna play, the state has to have the authority to shut them off if they have this, if they have a view of water. Otherwise, it doesn't work. You can't have people that aren't gonna be held to the reduction of water. It's up to them whether they want so much cut off immediately, fight in court for 3 years, end up with a cutoff for 1 year longer agreement. You look at Idaho Groundwater Association, when their study came out 10 years ago. A lot of their producers said, no, we're gonna fight this. We don't believe the study has all the information that's needed. They took it to Idaho Supreme Court. They spent $10 million. Idaho Supreme Court came back and said, hey, might not be everything you want or desire in that study, but it's the best information that's out there. You're gonna be regulated. Why? At that time, the state legislature stepped up in Idaho and didn't share a sacrifice, and they basically entered a volunteer agreement with that. Chad, you were looking concerned on one of my comments previous.
You said that volunteer agreements haven't been successful. I think it's more that they haven't been implemented by the state before.
I don't know if there's ever been a community that has presented a formal volunteer agreement to the Water Resource Commission in order to see if they can be successful. Okay, good difference. Thank you.
Well, I think we need to just take a moment and introduce Graham Thomas to this conversation too. Graham, do you want to take a minute and tell
Yeah.
him about yourself?
I'm a new employee with OWRD, and I'm going to be help launching and running the CREP program,
And CREP stands for?
the Conservation Resource Enhancement Program. So this is kind of some of these voluntary agreements to retire water rights, and be a good tool to reach some of goals.
We gotta work on that introduction.
So, we do appreciate you coming today, though, and being part of this conversation. Graham will be a person that'll be reaching, out to irrigators in the community and educating about what the CREP program is. what are the guidelines to it? What are the payouts with it? What's the timelines associated with it? And so, you know, you'll be seeing more of Graham in the community. He'll be working with the Water Resources Department. He is a current staff member with them.
Where do we go to get more information? We got a website, is there a pamphlet?
Yeah, so.
So I have a synopsis here, the executive summary of the groundwater portion of the groundwater plan. The department's gonna come in November 3rd and host the first community meeting. To actually start sharing with the community what they found is what is different from 2015 on May 26th, when they came in and said, hey, we might have made a mistake. The study's gonna show that they made a mistake.
So,
That's when the development exploded, was after that meeting.
So through the Rules Advisory Committee in April 2016, there was a determination made. There was 30,000 acres feet of water that had been applied for, but not had come to beneficial use. So they had a legal right in order to put that to beneficial use. The community at that time could have said, no, we don't want any of that further development to go on. I was on the rack, it was a determination we made to let that go because they had the legal right. But yes, there's been a lot of water put in for it since then. If you ask me personally, that was a mistake.
I mean, I know I've had 2 domestic wells go dry in there, it's about dry with a senior ride, and I can run out of fingers to count all the pivots that have come in within about 2 miles of me in that time. And so I guess that's the only thing that doesn't give you a lot of confidence in the volunteer agreement. Well, especially when a lot of it have been developed, you know, honestly, people that have the means to go deep and get a bigger pump and keep at it. And so I mean, it looks like you're at the spot where unless you know, have the horsepower to help pump from your rails, there isn't anything in place to stop it.
One of the things that was brought up there was remote sensing of water use. So if you say you're gonna stop running water through your pivot, it shows up green in the middle of July, probably you're not doing what you said you're gonna do. I mean,
So
I didn't-
in Umatilla, which is the last station that's gone through this similar process here, critical groundwater designation and regulation by prior appropriation, they did not seek a volunteer agreement for some reason. They dried up age for that.
And they just went and knocked on the doors.
They started shutting them off, and they worked out not exactly all the details, but the one thing you really have a hard time turning on the pumps is the on that power.
Do we know how many wells run off? How many ever aquifers we have in Huntington?
So there's 3 main drainages that come into the basin.
Mhm.
They have the balance broke out by basin. They do. But what it basically shows is the Harney basin, which is mainly the flat ground, from Silver Creek streams and facilities. We're in a deficit of about 110,000 acre feet, which doesn't mean much unless you say how much consumptive use we have. We pump about 135 to 145,000. So that's all going to manifest itself in declining groundwater levels, which will be the target of what we're going to be regulated off of. So we have to slow down the rate of decline. We have to come to close to a flat line in life. Some of that will also manifest itself in less evapotranspiration for sagebrush to brushes to all kinds of plants. We can get you that information specifically, but it's not good in any parts. If you looked up at Silver Creek, they are more stable, and if you look down in Princeton, they're more stable. November 3rd, I'd recommend coming in November 3rd and listening to the department. The court will have a role to play this way into the future. The work with the community is accountability. Also will come with some sort of water district board or something in order to prepare the volunteer agreements to support. There's a couple ways to process a water district in the county. To go to the vote of the people, or the court can process a water district too. So the community will definitely need the court to be involved in this conversation. Secretary Reynolds, you did say, do we have time in the 40-10? Reality is if you shut all the water off in Harney Basin right now, it's not coming back up. But we have to figure out as a community, how far can we let it go down? And then try to flatline that. The only places that will come up is the areas where it bifurcates or flood meadows. That's the only place where there's modern water. The only place where there's water less than 120 to 140 years old. Everything else was put in ground from when we were built. It's not coming back.
And so on the correct program, someone gives up their right, that water right is gone. Never to see the light of day. Correct.
Yeah, I believe so. I'm still learning.
There's two options with it. They can either retire the water right, or they can turn the irrigation well into a stock well to provide grazing on the same land, but it would become stock well instead of an irrigation well. Which is unique to Harney County. Other CREP programs do not have the grazing option attached to it, where as we developed ours, we wanted to make sure that the ground wasn't just left fallow and unusable. So if you can still graze it, still have a stock well available on the property, then it helps the economy in the long term.
Is there any like in between options where maybe you put a crop that requires less water and just run the pivot for a month or two, cut the use dramatically, but not eliminate entirely?
There's not, I think there's
All or nothing deal.
more of an effort for like native.
Yeah,
And
there's,
CREP,
they'll
It's
reestablish.
100% volunteer cancellation. Or where we get to what you are looking at, and we get to implementing some of the strategy in the department, alternative crops, native seeds, will be through the volunteer agreement.
Some of those may require some irrigation, but not nearly as much as a hay crop.
So a volunteer agreement in my mind, say I entered one as an individual, currently out of 100 gallons that I can allocate. I say I'm gonna use 3 gallons less a year for the next 10 years. I'm responsible for the accounting of the amount of water I'm using for the state. How I apply that, Tony, is up to me. So if I decide to take a native seed crop and I can grow an economic viable crop on an acre foot of water, that gets me a long ways down to it. That's where we're gonna get into that reduced bucket of water to the volunteer agreement.
What a lot of people are missing is late season quality forage. And so you could almost flip this around, not irrigate in spring, and then irrigate up in July and August when forage quality and range crashes. I mean, there are things you probably ought to be thinking about that may reduce water use, and it may be different than what we would normally think about.
There's a lot of things we can do on an acre foot or less of water than 2.4 acres. Not much you can do without.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate it, Holly.
Yeah.
Only work for the years.
And the community-based water planning meeting will be tonight between
Yes.
5 and 7 at the community center.
Thank you.
The agenda, prefer to recess for lunch, or do you want to?
I don't have a meeting today.
We're moving on.
I saw your email this morning. I haven't had a chance to read.
So there's the article.
And then, it's not commonly known about it. Printed a few things off and I did send you a few links. And this is something that started in Europe. The Austrians and Germans did a lot of work on what's called mass timber. What it amounts to is, and I kind of brought this up in some of the forest planning stuff, and it wasn't far enough along, that there was a lot of interest. It's a way to use small timber to make large structural beams and products. And they've been doing that in Europe, and they'll show in some of those links I sent you, they're building like skyscrapers. So some of these are, huge structures that they're building, but they're doing it with small sized timber. And so we have a lot of that.
Yeah. That's more our venue.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Item B, under new business resolution 2022-22, in the matter of interfund transfer of appropriations within categories for BLM sheriff contract fund. So it's just a decrease of 1,000 and an increase of 1,000 on the line. Well, during the budget process and the deputies dealing with BLM, they were told that, you know, we're not paying this, we're not paying some of these different line items. Well, what it's turned out to be is they turn in a set amount each month, and there's like 4 line items that they charge to BLM for. That's how BLM wants it booked on their end. How we break it out on our end is we can make that choice. So when they said, well, we're not gonna give you any for admin, it's all built into the amount that was agreed upon in their lines, how they want it presented on their end. Our end and our budgets is our picture. That's their picture and it's our picture. I guess that's what he said. So this is, so Bobby Joe's trying to save a line that's busting and fix no budget there. That makes sense. You go.
Yeah, the BLM paying one lump sum and how the county divvies it up into different line items for expenditure is county.
It's ours. Yeah. And that's not how it was brought to me during the budget process. Oh, it's gotta be this way, this way. Time has told us different. That is the story on that one.
Well, I move to approve resolution 2022-22 in the matter of intra-fund transfer of appropriations within categories for BLM Sheriff Contract Fund 220. The amount is $1,000 being decreased in material and supplies and increased in administration.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve resolution 2022-22. The matter of interfund transfer of appropriations within categories for BLM Sheriff Contract Fund 220. Decreasing 1,000 to increasing 1,000 under materials and supplies to admin. Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
I
Aye. Aye. And opposed? Motion carries. Item C. Resolution 2022-23, and this, we have had 2 hospice funds, memorial funds. One, the fund number 630.
well, one was
had-
home health, right?
Sorry,
One was home health and one was hospice.
no. So I had Bobby Joe memorialize some of the words that were in Fund 630 when it was created.
Uh-huh.
So the third whereas Harney County Memorial Home Health Care Fund 630 was conceived by Gordon Catterson in memory of his wife, Margie Catterson. And the said fund was established in December 84 for the purpose of providing funds for home care for those who do not have necessary resources. While our other fund, 256, is the Home Health and Hospice Memorial Fund, and it's the same purpose. The
Oh.
auditors have suggested we.
Was it
combine
never named Home Health and Hospice Memorial Fund?
Correct.
It was just named Hospice Memorial
Well,
Fund.
originally it's Memorial Home Health Care, which we don't even. Though that terminology doesn't even exist in any of our stuff anymore. Well, I can't really tell you the history why the second one, the 256 was created,
Okay,
other than donations coming in, and it's always for the purpose of, if there's something that can't afford to pay.
but the
the
whereas,
intent Is to, we're gonna cover that person.
so the whereas with Fund 256 Hospice Memorial, that they just left that title, but it's not just Hospice Memorial.
So 256 stays the same. We're gonna
Hospice
move the funds
Memorial.
out of 630 into 256.
So my concern is just the intent, of the old fund 630. It said for providing funds for home care, which could be hospice too, in my opinion, for those who do not have necessary resources.
Right.
But if Fund 256 is just called Hospice Memorial. Is that going to in any way limit home care, home health care?
That's why I
If
asked her
needed.
to, that's why I asked her that this wording was memorialized in this, that is for,
Because it's
The
called Home
6:30
Health and Hospice Memorial Fund now.
right,
Okay.
it's the 6:30 is just being combined into the two things, but I wanted that
Hospice
wording
Memorial.
left there for providing funds for home
And-
care for those who do not have necessary resources.
And the reason that there's the word memorial fund is because the origins of some of the funds were a memorial fund
They get donations all the time.
and they get
You'll see
donations.
People's obituaries, they want remembrances donated to the hospice memorial fund.
Okay, I
hospice
just
fund.
want to make sure
They'll
what
say
memorial
someone-
means in terms of the naming of a fund. I mean,
The memorial,
it's-
people are donating in memory of people, and they want it to be used for that purpose, for those that can't afford it, so
And-
they get the care they need.
Only funds that are given for that purpose are put into that fund. Any other grants or anything will not be placed into that fund. Would just be strictly a donation
So
type fund.
the Fund 256, is it just donated funds?
Correct.
Yeah, okay, so you're
That's
not
the
mixing the
purpose
color
of
money,
it. No,
one source to another.
no. No, we're just taking two of them that were donation funds and
There,
simplifying.
there is a line built into her budget each year, if you remember the budget process, that money can be moved from the 256 into her operating fund. And what they use that for is, and she's explaining, they'll buy sheets, they'll buy comfort items for
Necessary
people, the necessary items they need in their last days, so they're comfortable at home or wherever they may be. So that's how she can get to it during the budget process. There's usually a set amount. I don't think they ever spend more than 2,000. I don't think it's really ever been used for care of someone. I think we just need it. But if we ever felt like we needed to cover that care, we can do it. I mean, that's exactly what that's.
as long as there's no, I mean, if budget law allows for it, if it's been recommended by
Yeah.
our
The
auditors,
first, whereas says the auditors have made this recommendation.
yeah,
In accordance with an ORS that you can.
are there? Okay, no descendants of the originator 630 fund that need to be checked with or
They're
anything?
no longer with us.
Okay.
Very true.
Sounds fine to me.
And make a motion to approve resolution number 2022-23. In the matter of dissolving Memorial Home Health Care Fund 630 and merging with Hospice Memorial Fund 256.
Second,
Moving seconded to approve resolution number 2022-23. In the matter of dissolving Memorial Home Health Care Fund 630 and merging with Hospice Memorial Fund 256. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying
I,
aye. None opposed. In action. There is a resolution. Minutes of 84 attached with this. So that should have said the history of it.
should we take the presentation off?
Yeah. Get back to the Zoom on this one. Stop here. Stop here. Hmm. Oh, yeah, there's this. Yeah. Thank you. Item D. So these next four bargain and sell deeds are lands, sales that was approved and have gone through the process and sold. And this is the bargain and sell deed transferring into the names of the new owners. Two purchased by Soldier Creek Land LLC and two purchased by William and Lord.
I I would just need to look it over because they weren't posted with the materials.
Certificate of sale attached to each, showing where they paid. The fees that went along with. One went for 500 more than it was. Minimum goodness, I did that one. That's the G's.
Is there back on the tax rolls?
Next meeting, you'll have the list. I somehow put aside. Did not get it every year after tax season. the Assessor brings a list. If you want these to go on the for sale roll, you want to keep them on. There's like 16 parcels.
Usually, or
So
this
I-
year, or
This, well, from 21 at the end of tax season.
is that a lot or
That's
not
a
a lot?
lot.
It's a lot,
So-
okay.
I asked Brett to make us, he made me a map. Kind of divides the county into 4 quarters, so you can so you can tell where they're at. And I will have Eric look at that before the next meeting and we'll make sure we get this done to the assessor. It's my fault, I buried it on my desk and. Should have been done.
Good, that'll be good to get that done, all right.
Yeah, before the next tax hits. I mean, I've been aware of it too, those 2 houses that are in town are part of it, been dealing with that. But I just never did. Getting it to you, it's coming.
Well, I bet you'll be glad to get that done.
Sure, it'll be glad.
Thank you.
And. Yeah, the gals on the other side. Well, we got it done. So do you want to do these as one or just all in one or separate? Or do the 2 by 4?
Whatever you think is appropriate.
Probably approve them all at once.
Yeah,
Just
they all
accept
looked
them.
in order.
Just the account numbers.
I move to approve the bargain and sale deed account number 27097 and 27099 and 23326 and 23375.
I second.
Seconded to approve 4 bargain and sale deeds. As presented, account number 27097, 27099, 23326, and 23375. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed. On notices. Judy nowadays.
Let me see. Page on there. Some reason the cover page didn't attach.
Where did the 1956? Four out of 59.
Yeah.
Two in our basins.
Unusual.
And Klamath, one in Eugene.
Just as a piece of information, I was contacted by Jason Street from OWRD, and they have finished the interviews for the water master position for Harney County, and Dallas from the first was selected. And they will be opening up a position for an assistant water master and advertising it soon. Thank you.
Hopefully they move faster on that. Correspondence I have been in. What we don't have on scheduling is I didn't upgrade the dates that we're gonna go out to the local communities. I will take care of that.
Do you,
Mistake.
do you have any key
I might
People-
have a conflict on one of the dates that I was gonna point out.
Good.
Which one? Yeah.
I think the 18th. Remember correctly, it was gonna be Riley.
We can change that, I'm sure.
October is becoming a hectic month already. So let me put my calendar. Let's see if I can figure it out. I had down the 12th for Diamond, French
French
Glen,
Glen,
but
uh-huh.
French Glen would be the location, and then the 18th for Riley.
Do you have time available on the 17th or not?
Let me try to find my, I hadn't plugged it into my phone yet. It was in an email, but. I think I left it in my office.
That isn't wrong. Well, here's the side, so. Well,
I would-
if you do have a conflict on the 18th, it's another day, but
I was gonna ask Pete or Kristen if you have any people you know in French Glen area that. I mean, that the last time we had a meeting in Diamond, it was good because I did some outreach or, and. So people really knew and could come. I don't know that many people in French Glen personally, at least I don't think I do, so. If you can think of anybody who would be someone for me to call, just to, get some more ideas from them on. What time is a good time for them, et cetera. Your community.
John talks at the hotel. And I'm not sure who the gals is running the store, but he was very friendly this summer. We stopped in a couple of times there around him.
Okay, well, I can get hold of John,
Yeah.
I don't
Or,
know.
but, well, we, his significant others.
And a
She
Kelly.
would spread the word. That's why.
All right, I'll call them.
Kelly.
I'll call them just because
Yeah.
I like it. To be worthwhile for their community when we come down.
Let me look and I'll email you as soon as I find that. I can't remember if I needed to travel to get to a meeting. No.
You can't
I
remember
didn't
all
put
your
it in my
meetings,
brain.
Kristen? Oh, my gosh.
Well, we can at least keep the 12th for sure at this point, but I'm pretty sure I needed to reschedule it.
You do those at the schools?
Not necessarily, but often.
Carry calls. to
Usually.
schools And they there.
I was thinking Riley, maybe. I don't know, maybe the Riley store. If it was, I don't, do they have certain hours where they cut off or they
Scott
work? into-
Davies is who owns it now.
Yeah, I know, that's what I was thinking. I don't know. Just something that we never get. We don't get much turnout in Riley. Just trying to think if there's a bit, try something new, that's all.
Down landfill, we've got a store, we just stood back in the back, around all the merchandise.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a good idea. I just thought it might be a better idea at some point. So we'll hear from you, Kristen, on the other dates. Time of day for the French Glen one.
Back there is when we normally start.
Um,
Seven of them.
and this is just a question I had just for my own knowledge. I can't remember what type of treatment courts, transition courts, whatever, do we have in place in Harney County? I don't remember. Drug court, I mean, what, how many are there in?
Family is the new one that America's got going in theirs. There's two, well, by fund, there's two others.
Well, I'd be interested in having my memory refreshed on that at some point when you just by an email would be good. I appreciate that. I can't remember how many are still existing or. Okay. Well, that's all I had today. It was a good time spent yesterday with Association of Oregon Counties Director and Legislative Director, and good to be out in the community.
We don't have big projects. But we have a lot of projects. Not maybe directly tied to the board, but there's still a lot going on in the community.
So Commissioner Shellman's gonna represent Harney County next couple days in John Day, which we appreciate, and those will be for the what topic?
They are for the LCDC meetings, which is then Conservation Development Commission is meeting the 23rd and 22nd and 23rd at the airport in Grant County. The 22nd will consist of a meeting with the director, which will be a roundtable of leaders throughout the state.
And this is gonna be directly related to the wildfire mapping, or is this a general
Just-
big topic?
Just
of-
on the 22nd, their first agenda topic is that.
And
And then they have a whole slew of other agenda items that they'll be covering.
do you know if they're gonna be covering a lot because they're making a lot of changes and things, or?
I've never attended one of these meetings before, so I'm not.
Okay,
It's unusual for them to come out.
yeah, I was gonna say, they're trying to,
She's Brenda. I believe is her name, is the new director, and she's trying to do some outreach
okay,
as the new director to get
Okay,
a feel for
great.
what's going on in communities and needs and just build some rapport. So
good.
she has only been in that position, I believe, for 2 months or so. It hasn't been very long.
Good. So on Friday, Judge Reynolds and I are going to be going to the Association of Oregon Counties District 2 meeting, which is an annual thing. These are certain counties that are grouped together. There's 8, I think 8 districts. And this is our annual meeting. And unlike usual, when we're usually grouped with Grant, Union, Malheur, we're more with Lake, Klamath, Deschutes, Jefferson, Crook in this. And which is good. But we'll let you know anything that comes out of that.
We need to do 6:45.
Oh, hurt me.
It's 3 hours to members.
Okay,
Short drive.
The back way.
all right.
Okay.
There will be a SageCon meeting held at the Harney County Community Center, November 2nd and 3rd.
Sent that to Brandon too. Sage Farm.
Called Sage Common.
You want to know about sage grouse and. What's that about cooking?
They'd like a Basque recipe for that.
Lots of boiling.
Only salt, pepper, spices,
Yeah.
no other spices.
Onion.
David.
Yeah, I hear those are good.
Guess it didn't kill me.
Maybe larger quantity.
Yeah, now she's going, oh, okay, more than 3 next time. Okay, anything else? Think of anything, the paperwork's at the mayor title. Signed it when I got back yesterday, got them, so. That'll be closing on the. Right.
I was asked this morning when I was at Erickson's by a group of gentlemen that meet there regularly and visit with one another. They asked me about how much we paid for the property, and I told them the amount and that it was for the land, the value of the land was the price that we offered, and that it was not originally accepted, but then it was with the explanation, and they seemed satisfied with that. But they said, well, we hadn't read it anywhere. And I said, it may not have been published anywhere. But they seemed appreciative of the information. So,
No, from the other end, it's, I think it's running about $200 a month for right now. Sitting like it is.
oh, it is?
Oh, the other thing I was going to share is I did talk to Natalie Kenyon this morning. And their candidate that they've interviewed did accept the position, and all the clearances have been achieved. And the 4-H Leaders Association is meeting tonight, and they have been notified. She will be here the 3rd of October for that first week, and then she'll be working remotely until November 7th. And then from November 7th on, she'll be here. She will have to sell her property in Missouri and transition, so they're giving her a little bit of transition time. That hire has been achieved. Her name is Christine Stokely.
She's one of them that-
Be good to have her on board. And
That was news as of this morning.
and I would just like to say that I think that the Harney County Fair was very nice, and it was run very well. I know a lot of people contribute, and that we don't necessarily have as many volunteers overall across all the areas as some years in the past, so that was a good job.
For the next agenda, if we could put on a discussion of the email that Clay sent with the balance from OSU. We can discuss it. Natalie and I visited a little bit this morning, but we probably ought to have it as an actual agenda item to discuss. So we can
Sounds
just add
good.
it to next agenda.
Sure, put the 4 clues. List on there, so I get that to you. Okay. That will adjourn at 12:31.
Okay,
Thanks, everybody.
thanks. I need to have Jeremy look at my computer quick.